Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
In the intellectual ferment of the 1970s, a decade defined by the questioning of established orthodoxies, Immanuel Wallerstein presented a work of breathtaking ambition and profound consequence. His multi-volume treatise, The Modern World System, initiated in 1974 and significantly consolidated with its second installment in 1979, represented a fundamental challenge to the prevailing modes of social and historical analysis. Wallerstein proposed a radical shift in perspective, moving the unit of inquiry away from the sovereign nation-state or the discrete society towards a singular, encompassing entity, the capitalist world economy. This conceptual leap provided a powerful, integrated framework for understanding the origins, development, and structure of global inequality over the long durée of 5 centuries. The publication of the second volume confirmed that this was a sustained research program, a grand narrative whose architecture was as intricate as it was sweeping. Wallerstein's work compels scholars to reconceive the very nature of modernity, viewing it as the product of a singular, globally integrated system of capital accumulation, a system with a distinct spatial hierarchy and its own cyclical rhythms of expansion and crisis. The genesis of Wallerstein's project lies in the perceived inadequacies of the two dominant paradigms of its time, modernization theory and its primary antagonist, dependency theory. Modernization theory, a product of post-war American social science, posited a linear path of development in which all societies would eventually converge upon the model of the industrialized West. Wallerstein found this approach both ahistorical and deeply ideological, an apology for the existing global order. Dependency theory, emerging from Latin American scholarship, offered a potent corrective, arguing that the underdevelopment of the global South was a direct consequence of its economic subordination to the North. While Wallerstein drew heavily from dependency theorists like André Gunder Frank, he sought to embed their insights within a more comprehensive historical and systemic logic. His primary intellectual debt, however, was to the French Annales School, and specifically to Fernand Braudel. From Braudel, Wallerstein inherited the concept of the longue durée, the analytical commitment to viewing history over vast stretches of time to reveal deep, underlying structures impervious to the ephemera of political events. Braudel's magisterial work on the Mediterranean provided a methodological blueprint for studying large-scale, integrated historical systems, a model Wallerstein expanded to a planetary scale. This Braudelian sense of deep time, combined with a Marxian focus on the relentless logic of capital accumulation, became the twin pillars upon which the world systems edifice was constructed. The architecture of the modern world system, as detailed by Wallerstein, is elegant in its conceptual clarity. The fundamental unit of social reality, he argued, is the world system, a social system with a single division of labour and multiple cultural systems. Historically, these have taken two forms: world empires, which are politically unified under a single state, and world economies, which are integrated through economic ties but lack a singular political centre. The modern world system is the first and only example of a capitalist world economy that has endured and expanded to encompass the entire globe. Its defining feature is the primacy of endless capital accumulation. This imperative drives all other social, political, and cultural processes within the system. To explain its operation, Wallerstein proposed a tripartite spatial hierarchy composed of the core, the periphery, and the semi-periphery. The core regions, characterized by high profit, technologically advanced production and strong state machineries, dominate the system. They extract surplus from the periphery, vast regions relegated to the production of low-profit raw materials and agricultural goods, a process sustained by coercive labour practices and weak state structures. This transfer of wealth, or unequal exchange, a central mechanism that perpetuates and deepens global disparity. Between these two poles lies the semi-periphery, a crucial and dynamic component of the system. Semi-peripheral states are both exploited by the core and exploiters of the periphery. They possess a mix of core-like and peripheral economic activities and have moderately strong states. Wallerstein assigned this zone a critical stabilizing function. It politically diffuses the unified opposition that might otherwise emerge from a monolithic periphery and provides a location for upward or downward mobility within the system, preventing its complete polarization and collapse. The entire structure is animated by temporal dynamics, cyclical rhythms, such as the long economic cycles of expansion and contraction known as Kondrativ waves, punctuate the system's history, while secular trends, like the steady commodification of all things and the strengthening of the interstate system, market's long-term development, the interstate system itself, a product of the world economy, the existence of multiple competing states prevents any single entity from transforming the world economy into a world empire, which would stifle the very process of capital accumulation by subordinating economic logic to political trip. The first volume of the project, published in 1974, traced the genesis of this system to what Wallerstein, following Brodel, termed the long 16th century, roughly from 1450 to 1640. He argued that the crisis of European feudalism created the conditions for the emergence of a new social form. This European world economy was initially centered on the rising powers of northwestern Europe, England, the Netherlands, and northern France, which formed the nascent core. The Americas and Eastern Europe were incorporated as its first periphery, supplying bullion, grain, and timber through systems of forced labour. The once dominant city-states of Mediterranean Europe, like Genoa and Venice, were relegated to the status of a semi-periphery. This initial volume laid out the theoretical framework and demonstrated its power by reinterpreting the origins of European capitalism as a systemic, continent-wide process. The publication of the second volume in 1979, Mercantilism and the Consolidation of the European World Economy, 16 million wassels in 1750, was a pivotal moment. It extended the analysis into the age of absolutism, framing the fierce competition between England, France, and the Netherlands as a struggle for hegemony within the established world economy. Mercantilism, in this reading, was the signature policy of aspiring core powers seeking to manipulate economic flows to their advantage. The volume showed the theory's capacity to explain the consolidation of the system and the shifting fortunes of its constituent parts, solidifying Wallerstein's project as a formidable intellectual enterprise capable of generating a sustained historical narrative. The reception of the modern world system was immediate and intense, its publication sending shockwaves across the social sciences. It offered a powerful, unified theory that transcended disciplinary boundaries, inspiring a generation of scholars in historical sociology, international relations, and the nascent field of global history. Its vocabulary core, periphery, semi-periphery, swiftly entered the academic lexicon, providing a new language for discussing global power dynamics. Yet, the theory also attracted searching and persistent critiques. Perhaps the most formidable came from the historian Robert Brenner, who mounted a class-centered critique. Brenner argued that Wallerstein's model was a form of neo-Smithian circulationism, prioritizing market exchange over the relations of production. For Brenner, it was the specific nature of class conflict and property relations within a region, a peasant commune's ability to resist lordly extraction, that determined its developmental trajectory, a factor Wallerstein's systemic logic overlooked. Other scholars raised concerns about economic determinism, suggesting the model gave insufficient weight to culture, ideology, and human agency as independent forces in history. The concept of the semi-periphery, while theoretically elegant, was accused of functionalism, implying that the system somehow needed this zone to survive, a charge that edges close to teleology. Furthermore, the theory faced accusations of being subtly Eurocentric. By locating the system's genesis in early modern Europe, it risked reproducing the very narrative of European exceptionalism it sought to dismantle, a point powerfully articulated by scholars like Janet Abu-Lughod, whose work uncovered extensive world systems centered in Asia long before the European ascent. Despite these vital debates, the enduring legacy of Wallerstein's work is undeniable. Its sheer intellectual audacity attempt to explain 500 years of global history through a single, coherent, analytical model permanently altered the terrain of social inquiry. It forced disciplines that had long operated in comfortable isolation to confront one another and to think on a planetary scale. The research program it launched has been carried forward, modified, and enriched by subsequent generations of scholars. Giovanni Arrighi's The Long 20th Century, for instance, builds upon Wallerstein's framework but recasts the system's history as a succession of hegemonic cycles driven by finance capital. Beverly Silver's work on labour unrest uses a world systemic lens to analyse global waves of social conflict. The critiques themselves spurred productive avenues of research, pushing scholars to integrate class analysis, cultural factors, and pre-modern global connections more rigorously into their work. Immanuel Wallerstein's ultimate contribution was a Copernican revolution in the social sciences. He shifted the centre of analysis from the nation's hate to the world system, and in doing so, he provided an indispensable, if contested, map of modernity itself. Even those who dispute its specific contours must navigate the intellectual world that his audacious project remade. The questions he posed about the long-term dynamics of capitalism, the mechanisms of global inequality, and the very possibility of systemic transformation continue to resonate, framing the most urgent inquiries into the structure and future of our interconnected world.
We really appreciate you tuning into this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.